My name is Nerissa, and at 56 years old, I experienced something medical experts told me was impossible. After 7 years of profound deafness from a viral infection, my hearing suddenly returned one ordinary Tuesday morning. But instead of sharing this miracle with my family, I kept it secret. What I heard from my 28-year-old daughter Abigail when she thought I was still deaf shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. Those casual words changed everything I thought I knew about our relationship. Before I share my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button too. Trust me, you will want to hear how this journey ends. I spent 25 wonderful years as an elementary school teacher in our small Connecticut town before my hearing loss. The classroom was my sanctuary, filled with the beautiful chaos of young voices and curious minds. I loved every minute of it, from the morning bell to afternoon dismissal. Teaching was never just a job for me. It was my calling, my purpose. My husband Thomas and I built a solid life together over our 30 years of marriage. He worked as an architectural engineer, designing homes while I shaped young minds. We complemented each other perfectly, his quiet steadiness balancing my enthusiastic energy. When we welcomed our daughter Abigail into the world, our joy felt complete. Thomas was the one who taught her to ride a bike, while I helped with homework and school projects. Our home was always full of music and laughter. I sang in our church choir every Sunday and participated in the local theater group, usually behind the scenes, but occasionally in small roles. Thomas preferred to attend rather than perform, always sitting front row with an encouraging smile. Abigail inherited my love for performance, excelling in high school drama and debate club. Family dynamics were not always smooth sailing, especially during Abigail's teenage years. She and I butted heads frequently, two strong personalities under one roof. Thomas was our constant mediator, the bridge between mother and daughter when communication broke down. He had a gift for helping us understand each other when we could not find the words ourselves. Looking back, perhaps I relied too heavily on his mediation rather than learning to navigate the changing relationship with my daughter directly. Everything changed when I turned 49. What started as what I thought was a common cold developed into a rare viral infection that attacked my auditory nerves. The doctors tried everything: steroids, antivirals, even experimental treatments available only through special approval. Nothing worked. I watched in horror as my hearing deteriorated rapidly over 3 months, until one morning I woke up to complete silence. The specialists at Yale New Haven Hospital ran extensive tests and delivered the verdict with sympathetic expressions: my hearing loss was permanent and profound. No hearing aids would help. No surgery could repair the damage. The life I knew was over, and a new one needed to begin. Thomas immediately jumped into action, learning sign language alongside me, attending every therapy and counseling session. He transformed our home with visual alerts for the doorbell phone and fire alarms. He researched the best captioning technology and vibrating alarm clocks. His dedication never wavered, not even once. Adjusting to deaf life crushed my spirit initially. Depression enveloped me like a heavy blanket I could not shake off. My identity as a teacher, choir member, theater enthusiast, all seemed stripped away overnight. I took early retirement from teaching, unable to imagine managing a classroom without hearing my students. The school district offered a sign language interpreter, but it was not the same. How could I teach phonics or properly assess reading progress without hearing the sounds? Learning to read lips became my obsession. I practiced for hours daily with Thomas and with videos designed for the newly deaf. I learned which sounds were impossible to distinguish on lips alone and which conversational patterns to watch for. I became adept at facial expressions and body language cues, developing a heightened awareness of visual communication. New daily routines emerged. My phone became my primary connection to the world, with text replacing calls. Visual media took precedence over radio or audiobooks. Thomas and I developed our own shorthand signs for quick communication around the house. Technology helped tremendously with apps that transcribed speech to text and video relay services for important calls. In social situations, Thomas became my interpreter, discreetly signing conversations so I could participate. Most friends made efforts initially writing notes or speaking clearly facing me. But gradually, invitations decreased. Group gatherings became exercises in isolation, watching conversations I could not fully access. I learned who my true friends were by who was willing to communicate one-on-one, giving me their full attention. 2 years after my hearing loss, Abigail graduated college and moved back home, supposedly to help out while looking for jobs in her field of marketing. She had studied in Boston and initially planned to build her career there. Her return surprised us as she had always been fiercely independent. She claimed she wanted to support the family during this difficult adjustment period, but something about her explanation never quite rang true. With Abigail home, family dynamics shifted again. Thomas became the communication hub of our household, the bridge between daughter and mother. I noticed Abigail rarely signed directly to me, preferring to speak to Thomas, who would then relay messages. Despite my requests for her to sign, or at least face me when speaking, she often forgot or seemed frustrated by the effort. A subtle power shift occurred in the house. Decisions that I once led became conversations between Thomas and Abigail, with my input added afterward. Dinner menus, holiday plans, even furniture arrangements changed without my initial input. Thomas tried to include me, but the spontaneous discussions often happened when I was not looking, and he would summarize afterward. The distance between Abigail and me grew despite living under the same roof. The mother-daughter relationship I had hoped would improve with proximity seemed to deteriorate instead. She was physically present, but emotionally unavailable. I sensed her resentment building, though I could not pinpoint why or how to address it. The few times I tried to discuss it through written notes or sign, she dismissed my concerns, insisting everything was fine. I accepted this new normal, grateful for Thomas's unwavering support, while mourning the growing gulf between my daughter and me. I had no idea how much I did not know about my own family dynamics until that ordinary Tuesday when everything changed again. I woke up that Tuesday like any other day, reaching for my vibrating alarm clock to stop its silent pulsing against my nightstand. Thomas had already left for an early meeting, and Abigail would not be up for hours. I lay still for a moment, planning my day, when something impossible happened. I heard birds chirping outside my window. Not remembered, not imagined, but actually heard the high, sweet sound cutting through 7 years of silence. My heart raced as I sat bolt upright, wondering if I was hallucinating or dreaming. I snapped my fingers near my right ear. The crisp sound nearly made me gasp. I tried the left ear. Fainter, but definitely there. The ticking of the bedside clock suddenly registered a gentle rhythmic sound I had forgotten existed. Tears streamed down my face as I moved around the bedroom testing my miracle. The swoosh of curtains opening, the soft pad of my slippers on carpet, the squeak of the bathroom door. In the bathroom, I turned on the faucet and sobbed uncontrollably as water splashed into the basin with a sound I had not heard in 7 years. I slid down against the cool tile wall, overwhelmed by sensory input my brain had almost forgotten how to process. After the initial shock subsided, my practical nature took over. I needed to see an audiologist before telling anyone, even Thomas. What if this was temporary? What if it was a strange neurological event rather than true hearing restoration? I could not bear to give my family hope only to have it dashed. I called Dr. Peterson's office the moment they opened, explaining my situation to the receptionist, who immediately squeezed me in for a 10 o'clock appointment. I texted Thomas that I had a routine massage appointment, a small deception that made me uncomfortable but seemed necessary. Dr. Peterson's face registered shock when I explained what had happened. After thorough testing, she confirmed what seemed impossible. I had regained approximately 70% of my hearing capacity more in my right ear than left, but significant recovery in both. She shook her head in amazement as she reviewed the results. Nerissa, this is what we call spontaneous recovery, but it is extremely rare in cases as severe and prolonged as yours, she explained, showing me the audiogram. There are only a handful of documented cases worldwide after such complete hearing loss for this duration. Will it last? I asked, the fear evident in my voice. Impossible to say with certainty. Some recoveries are permanent, others temporary. We will need to monitor you closely, she replied, scheduling a follow-up for the following week. Your brain will need time to readjust to processing auditory input again. You might experience headaches, confusion, or sensory overload. Take it slowly. Before leaving, she warned me that sudden environmental sounds might be jarring after years of silence. Car horns, sirens, even normal conversation might seem painfully loud until my brain readjusted. She recommended gradual reintroduction to sound environments rather than immediately jumping into noisy situations. As I sat in my car in the medical center parking lot, I planned how to share this miraculous news with Thomas and Abigail. Perhaps a special dinner where I would respond to a spoken question, watching their faces transform with surprise and joy. The thought made me smile as I started the engine, now hearing its gentle purr. Then, something unexpected happened. I overheard a conversation between two nurses walking to their cars nearby. That Patterson case is heartbreaking, one said. Family acts so concerned in the room, then I overheard them in the hallway discussing putting him in a facility so they could sell his house. People wear different faces depending on who they think is watching, the other replied. You never really know someone until you hear what they say, when they think you cannot hear them. Their words struck me like a physical blow. For 7 years, I had only experienced what people wanted me to see. What might I learn if I kept my hearing secret for a little while? What did my family say when they thought I could not hear them? The question took root, and with it, a decision that would change everything. I drove home with a new plan. I would maintain the pretense of deafness for a few days just to observe normal household dynamics before revealing my changed condition. It felt slightly dishonest, but also necessary, a way to understand my place in my family with new clarity. That afternoon, Thomas returned from work with his usual warm smile, signing a greeting and kissing my cheek. His behavior was exactly as it had been the day before, kind and attentive. He signed asking about my day, and I responded about errands, omitting the doctor visit. We prepared dinner together with the easy synchronicity of decades together, him automatically narrating his actions in sign when my back was turned. Our elderly neighbor Frank stopped by to borrow a ladder, and I observed with new awareness how differently he interacted with each of us. With Thomas, his conversation flowed naturally about the weather and local sports team. When addressing me, he slowed his speech dramatically, exaggerated his mouth movements, and raised his volume unnecessarily, despite knowing I read lips and could not hear, regardless of how loudly he shouted. Thomas gently corrected him, as he had probably done countless times before, but Frank seemed unable to adjust his approach. When Abigail came home from her part-time job at the local marketing firm, I noticed something that sent a chill through me. Her greeting to Thomas was warm and chatty, full of details about her day. When she turned to me, her expression shifted subtly, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she signed a basic hello. Had this always been the pattern, or was I noticing it only now, because I could hear the warmth in her voice that disappeared when she communicated with me? As the evening progressed, my anxiety grew about what else I might discover. Part of me wanted to reveal my hearing immediately, to share the joy and forestall any painful revelations. But another part needed to understand the reality of my family life, not just the version presented to my face. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, wondering if the truth would heal or destroy us. Over the next few days, I began collecting small revelations, like pebbles, each one small, but accumulating into something substantial. The delivery person who brought a package commented to Thomas, "Must be hard with your wife's condition and all," with a pitying tone that made me wince internally. Thomas's response surprised me with its firmness. "Actually, we are doing just fine. Nerissa is one of the most capable people I know, hearing or not." His defense warmed my heart and confirmed what I had always believed about his character. My friend Sarah visited for coffee, and I observed how she spoke normally to Thomas, but dramatically simplified her conversation when signing to me. "Weather nice today. You good?" She signed with exaggerated movements, then turned to Thomas and said, "I was telling the book club about that article on climate policy in The Atlantic. What did you think of the author's position on carbon taxation?" The disparity was jarring. Had she always treated me as intellectually diminished because of my deafness? Or had this pattern developed gradually, without my awareness? Most concerning were Abigail's phone conversations, which I could now partially overhear from adjacent rooms. "No, I cannot make the interview in Boston next week," she told someone, presumably about a job opportunity. "Someone needs to be here with Mom when Dad travels for work. She acts independent, but you know how it is." The resentment in her voice was unmistakable, confirming my suspicions that her return home had not been entirely voluntary. In another call, she complained to a friend, "7 years of this, can you believe it? Dad has completely reorganized his life around her disability, and now he expects me to do the same. I had plans, you know, my own life." The bitter edge in her voice cut deep, each word cementing my growing suspicion that my daughter viewed me primarily as a burden. These discoveries built toward a painful culmination during a family dinner 4 days after my hearing returned. Thomas prepared my favorite meal, herb-roasted chicken with rosemary potatoes and fresh green beans from our garden. The familiar smells filled the kitchen as I set the table, trying to act normally despite the growing knot of anxiety in my stomach. Abigail arrived late, clearly irritated about something. She signed a brief apology with a tight expression, her movements sharp and impatient. Throughout dinner, conversation was strained with Thomas mediating as usual. Abigail responded to his questions with single-word answers, her attention frequently drifting to her phone beneath the table. Midway through the meal, Thomas's phone rang with a call from his biggest client. He excused himself to take it in his home office, leaving Abigail and me alone at the table. I continued eating, pretending not to notice her heavy sigh of frustration. Then it happened. Believing I could not hear her, Abigail muttered under her breath, "I cannot believe I gave up my life in Boston for this. Dad is too loyal for his own good. If it were me, I would have left years ago. She is nothing but a burden to everyone." The words hit me like a physical blow. I nearly dropped my fork, but managed to maintain my composure, years of practice, hiding my emotions serving me well in that terrible moment. When I looked up, Abigail had plastered on a fake smile and signed, "Dinner is delicious, Mom. Thank you and Dad for cooking." The contrast between her spoken words and signed message made me physically nauseous. Thomas returned moments later, oblivious to what had transpired in his absence. I excused myself shortly after claiming a headache that was not entirely false. In the sanctuary of my bedroom, I finally allowed the tears to fall, silent sobs shaking my body as I processed my daughter's cruel words. That night was one of the longest of my life, each passing hour bringing new painful reinterpretations of the past 7 years. Had Abigail always resented me this deeply? Were there signs I had missed? How many kind gestures had hidden contempt behind them? What about Thomas? Did he share her view of me as a burden, but was simply better at hiding it? I considered confronting Abigail immediately, but hesitated. If I revealed my hearing now in the heat of hurt and anger, the resulting conflict might permanently damage our relationship. Instead, I decided to continue my observation to understand the full scope of our family dynamics before taking action. It was one of the hardest decisions I had ever made, choosing knowledge over immediate emotional release. Over the next 2 weeks, I observed Abigail's behavior with painful new awareness. A clear pattern emerged of her leading a double life in our home. To my face, she was cordial, if somewhat distant, signing basic pleasantries and occasionally helping with household tasks. The moment she believed I could not perceive her a different person emerged one filled with resentment and martyrdom. Phone calls to friends revealed the depth of her frustration. "Another exciting Saturday night stuck at home," she complained sarcastically to someone named Jessica. "Mom needs someone here when Dad works late, and heaven forbid she be inconvenienced." The unfairness of her characterization stung, as I had never asked her to stay home on my account and had repeatedly encouraged her independence. Most shocking was discovering Abigail had a boyfriend, Jason, whom she had never mentioned or introduced to us. "He gets tired of always coming to my place," she told a friend. "But bringing him home is complicated. Mom is so needy for attention when new people are around, and Jason already has issues with the whole disabled mother-in-law thing. Says his cousin married someone whose mother had MS, and it took over their entire lives." Through various overheard conversations, I pieced together that Abigail had turned down a significant job promotion that would have relocated her to Chicago, ostensibly to remain nearby for family support. Her resentment toward Thomas surprised me almost as much as her feelings toward me. She frequently criticized him for enabling me, claiming he could afford specialized care, but chose to martyr himself instead. "Dad acts like she cannot function without him," she told Jason during a call. "He has convinced himself she needs him, and now he has guilted me into the same trap. 7 years of this with no end in sight." The portrait these revelations painted of my daughter was heartbreaking. A young woman who viewed herself as sacrificing her future on the altar of familial obligation. The fact that neither Thomas nor I had ever asked this of her seemed irrelevant to her narrative. In stark contrast, observing Thomas revealed a man exactly as I had always known him to be. Whether I was present or not, whether he believed I could hear or not, his behavior remained consistent and loving. I overheard him humming our wedding song while working in the garage, talking softly to our cat about his day, mentioning something sweet I had done that had touched him. These private moments confirmed what 30 years of marriage had shown me, that his devotion was genuine, not performance. I witnessed him gently trying to adjust Abigail's attitude during a private conversation. "Your mother gave up so much without complaint," he told her when she made a snide remark about my asking for help programming the television. "She never let deafness define her or use it as an excuse. I wish you could see how strong she really is." "That is easy for you to say," Abigail retorted. "You chose this life. I was born into it." Their conversation revealed the complex emotions underlying our family dynamic, how differently each of us had processed my disability and its impact on our shared life. My investigations extended beyond our home. At church, I overheard congregation members discussing me when they thought I was not paying attention. "Such a shame about Nerissa," elderly Mrs. Hoffman told her friend. "She was so vibrant before. Thomas is a saint for sticking by her all these years." The pity in her voice made me want to scream that I was still the same person, that deafness had changed my circumstances, but not my essence. Former teaching colleagues who had gradually stopped including me in social gatherings revealed their reasoning in overheard comments. "It is just so much work trying to communicate with Nerissa," my once close friend Barbara told another teacher at the grocery store, not realizing I could now hear them from the next aisle. "Everything takes twice as long, and you never know if she really understands what you are saying." The casual dismissal from someone who had been a bridesmaid at my wedding cut deeply. My investigations revealed who my true friends were. Sarah, despite her simplified signing, genuinely advocated for me when I was not around, correcting misconceptions and insisting I be included in community events. My neighbor Elena regularly defended me to others, once telling a gossipy newcomer, "Nerissa knows more about what is going on in this town with no hearing than most people do with perfect ears. Never underestimate her." The emotional burden of these discoveries grew heavier each day. Anxiety about what painful truth I might uncover next began affecting my sleep and appetite. Guilt about my deception warred with my need to understand the reality of my place in my community and family. I developed headaches from the constant stress of pretending not to hear while processing everything I now could. Physical symptoms manifested from the emotional turmoil migraines so severe, they sent me to bed acid reflux that burned my throat, tension in my shoulders that no amount of stretching could release. I began questioning my worth to those around me, wondering if I had become merely an obligation rather than a beloved wife, mother, and friend. At night, I poured my thoughts into a journal, processing each new revelation and trying to find meaning in the painful truths I was discovering. Who am I now? I wrote one particularly difficult evening. Not just a deaf woman, but now a woman who can hear the truth people hide from her face. Which identity is more isolating? After nearly 3 weeks of secret hearing, the situation reached its breaking point on a Sunday afternoon. Thomas had gone to help his brother with a plumbing emergency, and I was reading in the living room when Abigail arrived with a young man I had never met but instantly recognized as Jason from her descriptions. They clearly believed the house was empty as they spoke freely while removing shoes in the foyer. "Nice place," Jason commented, looking around our home with appraising eyes. "Pretty big for 3 people?" "4 bedrooms," Abigail replied. "Mom and Dad in the master, me in my old room, 1 guest room, and Dad converted the 4th into a home office when Mom had to retire." They moved toward the kitchen, unaware of my presence in the adjoining room. I remained still, heart pounding as their conversation continued. "So, where is your mom now?" Jason asked, opening our refrigerator with the casual entitlement of someone who considered himself already part of the family. "Dad took her to visit his brother. They will be gone all afternoon." The casual lie surprised me as Abigail knew perfectly well Thomas had gone alone. "Have you thought more about what we discussed?" Jason asked, his voice taking on a serious tone. "About your parents' situation." "You mean about Mom?" Abigail sighed heavily. "I have been looking into it. There are some really nice assisted living facilities that specialize in deaf residents. The one in Hartford has an entire floor for people with hearing impairments." "That would free up your dad, too," Jason added. "He could sell this place, get something more manageable. You said they have good insurance, right?" "Long-term care policy that would cover most of it," Abigail confirmed. "Dad refuses to consider it, though. Says they promised each other home care only no matter what." "People make promises before they understand the reality of caregiving," Jason replied with the confident authority of someone who had never been a caregiver. 7 years is a long time to put your life on hold. Your life, too. The casual way they discussed removing me from my home, dismantling the life Thomas and I had built together, sent a shockwave through my body. My hand jerked involuntarily, knocking a glass vase from the side table. It shattered on the hardwood floor with a crash that echoed through the quiet house. Abigail and Jason rushed into the living room, their expressions morphing from alarm to confusion upon seeing me. "Mom, I thought you were with Dad at Uncle Robert's," Abigail exclaimed, her hands automatically forming the signs to accompany her words. In that moment, the burden of pretense became unbearable. 3 weeks of accumulated pain, betrayal, and anger burst through the carefully constructed dam of my self-control. "I heard everything, Abigail," I said aloud, my voice rusty from minimal use but clear enough. "About the assisted living facility, about selling our home, about what a burden I am to everyone." Abigail's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Jason stood frozen beside her, looking like he wanted to disappear through the floor. "You can hear," she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. "For 3 weeks now," I replied, my voice gaining strength with each word. "The doctors cannot explain it, a miracle they called it, but instead of the joy I expected, all I have heard since my hearing returned is how much my own daughter resents me. That is not fair. Abigail protested, finding her voice. You have been spying on me, on all of us, listening to private conversations never meant for you to hear, private conversations about putting me in a home without my knowledge or consent. I shot back, years of unspoken hurt pouring out. About what a burden I am, how I have ruined your life. Tell me, Abigail, when exactly did you plan to include me in decisions about my own future? You do not understand, she said, tears forming in her eyes. You never understood what it has been like for me. Then tell me, I challenged. Tell me to my face, not behind my back. Tell me how you really feel. Now that you know, I can hear every word. What might have become a breakthrough moment of honest communication was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Thomas entered, stopping short at the tableau before him, me standing rigid with anger, Abigail tearful, and a stranger looking desperately uncomfortable. What is going on? He asked, looking between us in confusion. Who is this? Dad, Mom can hear, Abigail blurted out, pointing at me accusingly. She has been able to hear for weeks and has been spying on all of us. Thomas's eyes widened as he turned to me, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face. Hope, confusion, hurt, and concern all battled for dominance. Nerissa, is this true? He asked softly. The gentle question broke something in me. Yes, I admitted, tears finally spilling over. My hearing started coming back 3 weeks ago. Dr. Peterson confirmed it. I was going to tell you that very day, but then I overheard something that made me wonder what people said when they thought I could not hear. And you did not trust me enough to tell me. The hurt in his voice was palpable. It was not about trust, I tried to explain. I needed to understand what was real and what was performance. I needed to know the truth. The truth is that you have been deceiving us, Abigail interjected angrily. Listening to private conversations, judging us for things we said when we thought we were alone. The truth is that you have been deceiving me for years, I countered, turning back to her. Pretending to support and care about me while secretly resenting every moment, making plans about my future behind my back. Thomas held up his hands, trying to stem the flood of accusations. Wait, please, both of you. He turned to Jason, who looked desperately uncomfortable. I think perhaps this should be a family conversation. Jason nodded quickly, clearly relieved for an escape route. I will call you later, he murmured to Abigail before making a hasty exit. Once the door closed behind him, Thomas took a deep breath. Now, one at a time. Nerissa, your hearing has returned when how? I explained the sudden return, the doctor's visit, the diagnosis of spontaneous recovery. As I spoke, I could see the conflict in his face, joy at the miracle fighting with hurt at my deception. And you decided not to tell me because, he prompted when I finished the medical explanation. Because I overheard nurses talking about patients whose families acted differently when they thought no one was listening. It made me wonder what I might learn if I just observed for a while. I looked at Abigail, who was staring at the floor. And I learned plenty. Like what? Thomas asked, his voice carefully neutral. Like our daughter has been planning to put me in a facility so you can sell our home. Like she resents every minute she spends with her disabled mother. Like she blames you for enabling me instead of warehousing me somewhere convenient. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. That is not what I said, Abigail protested. You are twisting everything. I heard you, Abigail. In this very room not 30 minutes ago, discussing Hartford facilities with your boyfriend, neither of us has ever met. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Enough! Thomas rarely raised his voice, and the sharp command silenced us both. This is not productive. We are all upset, and clearly there are things that have been left unsaid for too long. He looked between us, his expression solemn. I think we all need some time to process. Nerissa, this is wonderful news about your hearing, though I wish you had shared it immediately. Abigail, whatever your feelings, making plans about your mother's care without her input was wrong. He sighed deeply. I suggest we all take some space. Abigail, perhaps you should go to your room or take a walk. Nerissa and I need to talk privately. Abigail looked ready to argue, but must have seen something in her father's expression that brooked no opposition. She left footsteps heavy on the stairs as she retreated to her bedroom. Once alone, Thomas and I stood in painful silence for several moments. The man who had been my rock, my advocate, my partner through 30 years of marriage, looked at me with eyes full of confused hurt. Why Nerissa? He asked simply. After everything we have been through together, why would you not share this miracle with me immediately? I was going to, I said, my anger deflating into exhaustion. But then I started hearing things, Thomas. Things that made me question everything. I needed to know if you felt the same way Abigail does, if you saw me as a burden too. And do you have your answer? He asked quietly. Yes, you have been exactly the same person whether you thought I could hear or not. But our daughter... I could not finish the sentence. Thomas moved to the couch, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. We have all failed each other, he said softly. I have enabled unhealthy patterns. You have withdrawn rather than confronting issues directly. Abigail has nursed resentments instead of expressing them appropriately. No one is blameless here. His words hit me with the force of truth. We sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of revelation and deception heavy between us. I need some time, I finally said. I cannot be in this house right now with her pretending everything is fine. Thomas nodded slowly. Perhaps that is best. Where will you go? Sarah's, maybe, just for a few days until I can think clearly. He did not try to stop me as I packed a small bag and called Sarah, who immediately offered her guest room without pressing for details. As I left our home of 25 years, I wondered if anything would ever be the same again, if the fractures revealed today could ever truly heal. Sarah's guest room became my refuge for 3 days of solitude and reflection. My oldest friend asked no questions when I arrived, teary-eyed, with a hastily packed bag, simply showing me to the room and assuring me I could stay as long as needed. She respected my need for space while making sure I ate regular meals and had someone to talk to when I was ready. On the second day, I rediscovered my love for painting, something I had abandoned shortly after losing my hearing. Sarah had a small studio in her basement where she created pottery, and she offered me a corner with an easel canvas and acrylics. The familiar smell of paint transported me back to younger days, and I lost myself for hours creating abstract expressions of my turbulent emotions. Bold red slashes of anger, deep blue pools of hurt, small points of golden hope emerging through the chaos, each painting a wordless therapy session. Dr. Peterson called to check on me after I missed a follow-up appointment. When I explained the situation in halting terms, she offered more than medical advice. The return of hearing can cause psychological adjustment issues as significant as the original loss, she explained gently. Add in family conflict and deception, and you are experiencing extreme emotional whiplash. Be patient with yourself, Nerissa. I keep wondering if I should have just announced my hearing immediately, I confessed, if knowing the truth was worth the pain it has caused. Truth has a way of surfacing eventually, she replied. Better on your terms than accidentally discovered later. But how you proceed from here matters more than past decisions. Her words prompted deep reflection about my role in our family's dysfunction. Had I allowed my deafness to become too central to my identity? Had I unconsciously used it as a shield against addressing difficult relationship issues with Abigail? Had I become too passive, allowing Thomas to mediate rather than directly engaging with conflicts? On the third day, Thomas came to visit. Sarah tactfully made herself scarce as we sat in her sunroom surrounded by hanging plants and the afternoon light filtering through lace curtains. "How are you?" he asked, his concern evident despite the strain between us. "Processing," I replied honestly. "Trying to understand how we got here. Missing you, angry at Abigail, angry at myself." He nodded, hands clasped between his knees. "I have been doing some thinking too. I am hurt that you did not trust me with your recovery immediately, but I understand why you felt you needed to observe." "And," I prompted, needing to hear his conclusions. "And you were right about some things. I have enabled unhealthy patterns in our family. I became so focused on protecting you that I never forced Abigail to communicate directly with you. I allowed her to use me as a buffer rather than developing her own relationship with you." He sighed heavily. "That was wrong, and we are all paying the price now." His admission opened the door to honest conversation. For 2 hours we talked more openly than we had in years, perhaps ever. He shared his own struggles with my disability not as complaints, but as acknowledgments of reality. The fear when I withdrew into depression after diagnosis. The exhaustion of being the bridge between his wife and daughter. The worry about my safety when he traveled for work. "I never saw you as a burden," he emphasized. "But I did take on responsibilities that perhaps should have been shared more equally. I became your protector when you needed a partner." His words stung with truth, but also offered a path forward. "And Abigail?" I asked, the central wound still raw. "She is hurting too," he said carefully. "Not excusing her behavior or words, but there is more to her story than you have heard. I think we all need to talk with help." "You mean therapy?" "Family counseling," he confirmed. "Someone objective who can help us communicate honestly and rebuild trust." The suggestion made sense, though the prospect of sitting across from Abigail and revisiting her hurtful words made my stomach clench. "I am not ready to return home yet," I admitted. "Take the time you need," he assured me. "But please consider coming back soon. We cannot heal what we do not confront." He left me with a gentle kiss and a promise to call the next day. After he departed, I returned to Sarah's studio and painted deep into the night, processing our conversation and preparing myself for what would come next. During my time at Sarah's, I reconnected with an unexpected source of healing. Meredith Johnson, a former teaching colleague, reached out after hearing through the grapevine about my restored hearing. Over coffee in Sarah's kitchen, she mentioned her volunteer work with deaf children at the community center. "We desperately need someone with your experience," she enthused. "Someone who understands both worlds, hearing and deaf. Would you consider joining us even just a few hours a week?" The invitation sparked something I had thought long extinguished my passion for teaching and connecting with children. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of purpose beyond my family drama. "I would like that," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. This small commitment became an anchor as I contemplated returning home. I was not merely a wife or mother in crisis, but a woman with skills, experiences, and contributions to make. Somehow, in the years of adjustment to deafness, I had allowed myself to become passive, defined by what I had lost, rather than what I still offered. I realized with growing clarity that regardless of how things unfolded with Abigail, I needed to reclaim my independence and agency. Whether my hearing remained or disappeared again tomorrow, I was more than my sensory abilities or limitations. This fundamental truth had somehow gotten lost in the years of adaptation and family restructuring. Before returning home, I met with a therapist, Dr. Leanne Maxwell, recommended by Dr. Peterson, as someone experienced with disability issues and family dynamics. In a sunlit office filled with plants and comfortable furniture, I poured out the whole story, from hearing loss to miraculous recovery to devastating discoveries. What terrifies me most about returning home is confronting Abigail, I admitted. I do not know if I can forgive her, or if she even wants forgiveness. Dr. Maxwell listened attentively before responding. Before considering forgiveness, consider boundaries. What are your non-negotiables moving forward? What behaviors will you no longer accept? Clarity about these will help you navigate the conversations ahead. We spent the session identifying my boundaries and rehearsing direct communication approaches. I left with a notebook full of talking points and a slightly stronger sense of preparedness for the difficult conversations ahead. Remember, Dr. Maxwell said as our session ended, healing does not mean returning to exactly how things were before. It means creating something new that acknowledges the hurt while building healthier patterns. I returned home on a Wednesday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the confrontation that had fractured our family. Thomas greeted me with a warm embrace and the news that he had scheduled our first family therapy session with Dr. Maxwell for Friday. Abigail had reluctantly agreed to attend, though she was currently staying with a friend to give us all space. As I unpacked my bag in our bedroom, I felt both trepidation and determination. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, I was facing it with my full self, no longer hiding behind silence or deception, ready to speak my truth and hear others, regardless of how painful the exchange might be. The therapist's office felt simultaneously professional and comfortable with soft lighting and chairs arranged in a small circle rather than the confrontational setup I had feared. Dr. Maxwell welcomed us with calm authority, establishing ground rules for our session before we began. Everyone will have uninterrupted time to speak, she explained. We listen without planning our responses, truly hearing each person's experience before reacting. Can everyone commit to that? We all nodded, though. Abigail's posture radiated reluctance, arms crossed tightly over her chest, as she sat as far from me as the seating arrangement allowed. Thomas occupied the middle position physically and emotionally between us, as had become our family pattern. Nerissa, would you like to begin by sharing what prompted you to keep your hearing recovery secret? Dr. Maxwell invited. Taking a deep breath, I described the moment of discovery, the initial joy, the plan to surprise my family, and then the overheard conversation that changed everything. I detailed the painful revelations of the following weeks without accusation, simply stating what I had heard and how it made me feel. The hardest part was realizing my daughter sees me as a burden, I concluded, voice-catching, despite my determination to remain composed. That she discusses my care with strangers as though I am an inconvenience to be managed, rather than a person with agency and feelings. Throughout my account, Abigail's expression cycled through defensiveness, anger, and occasional flashes of what might have been guilt. When Dr. Maxwell turned to her, she straightened in her chair. From my perspective, Mom violated our trust. She began, voice taut with emotion. She listened to private conversations never intended for her ears, then judged us for venting feelings in what we thought was a safe space. Tell us more about those feelings, Dr. Maxwell prompted gently. What has your experience been these past 7 years? Something in the therapist's neutral question seemed to break a dam in Abigail. Words poured forth years of unexpressed resentment and complicated emotions. Do you know what it was like growing up? She asked, addressing me directly for the first time. Your students always came first. Every school play I was in, you were helping some other kid with homework or tutoring. You were everyone's favorite teacher, but never fully present for me. The accusation stung partly because it contained a kernel of truth. I had been devoted to my students, sometimes at the expense of family time. Then you lost your hearing, and suddenly everything was about you, she continued. The whole family revolved around your needs, your adjustment, your feelings. Dad became your full-time interpreter and advocate. Every holiday, every gathering, every decision filtered through your disability. Abigail, Thomas interjected, that is not fair. Let her finish, Dr. Maxwell reminded him. Everyone gets uninterrupted time. Abigail shot her father a grateful look before continuing. When I moved back from Boston, it was not entirely voluntary. My job had eliminated my position, and my relationship had just ended. I needed a place to stay temporarily, but then Dad started traveling more for work and made it clear someone needed to be with Mom when he was gone. This was news to me. Thomas had never presented her return as necessary for my care, at least not to my face. What was supposed to be a few months turned into 2 years, she continued. Every time I found a job opportunity that would take me away, there was subtle pressure to stay. Not direct guilt trips, but comments about how much help I was, how much safer Dad felt traveling, knowing I was home with you. She looked down at her hands. I started resenting both of you, but it was easier to direct it at Mom because she could not hear me complain. It was wrong, I know that, but it felt like the only outlet I had. Her admission was both painful and clarifying. I had been cast as the villain in her story, the obstacle to her independence, when in reality, she had been struggling with her own challenges and using me as a convenient target for displaced frustration. When Thomas's turn came, he surprised us both with his candor. "I have failed you both," he said simply. "Nerissa, I thought I was supporting you, but I was actually insulating you from normal family conflict, creating an environment where direct communication withered. Abigail, I unfairly placed responsibility on you for your mother's care without acknowledging it explicitly, then minimized your sacrifices." He described his own fear and helplessness when my hearing disappeared, how his need to protect me had morphed into controlling family dynamics in unhealthy ways. "I became the hub through which all communication passed," he acknowledged. "That gave me power I never wanted and created distance between the two people I love most." Dr. Maxwell guided us through the painful revelations with skilled questions and observations, helping us see the patterns that had led to our current crisis. By session's end, no miraculous healing had occurred, but something had shifted. We had begun to see each other as complex humans, rather than the simplified roles we had assigned, the burden, the martyr, the resentful daughter. "This is just the beginning," Dr. Maxwell cautioned as our time concluded. "Healing takes time and consistent effort. I would like to see you weekly for at least the next 3 months, with individual sessions as needed." We agreed to continue therapy, establishing a regular Friday appointment. As we left her office, the silence between us felt different, less hostile, and more contemplative, each of us processing the revelations of the intense session. In the weeks that followed, we attended therapy faithfully, gradually unraveling the tangled threads of resentment, miscommunication, and unmet needs that had bound us in unhealthy patterns. Between sessions, we practiced new communication approaches, sometimes succeeding, often failing, but always trying again. A turning point came during our 5th session, when Abigail broke down completely while describing her fears about her own future. "I am 28, with no career path, no relationship, living at home," she sobbed. "My friends are getting married, buying homes, advancing in their careers. I feel stuck, and it was easier to blame Mom than admit I am terrified I have wasted my prime years." Her vulnerability opened a door to genuine connection. For the first time, I saw my daughter not as my cruel judge, but as a young woman struggling with her own demons, using my disability as a convenient explanation for her stalled life. "I never wanted to hold you back," I told her honestly. "If I had known you felt trapped, I would have insisted you leave disability or not." "Would you have been okay if I had moved away?" she asked, genuine surprise in her voice. "Not only okay, but happy for you," I assured her. "Your life is your own, Abigail. It always has been." This exchange marked a subtle but significant shift in our relationship. The raw honesty created space for new understanding, if not immediate healing. Meanwhile, I began volunteer work with deaf children at the community center, teaching twice weekly for 2 hours. The experience reconnected me with my teaching identity, reminding me of the skills and passion that had defined my professional life. The children aged 6 to 12 responded enthusiastically to a teacher who understood both deaf and hearing worlds. Their parents sought my advice on navigating school systems and advocating for appropriate accommodations. This work became my anchor, a source of meaning and purpose, independent of family drama. When I shared my experiences at dinner, Thomas and Abigail showed genuine interest, asking questions and acknowledging my expertise. These conversations felt like tenuous bridges being rebuilt between us. Thomas also began reclaiming parts of himself that had been subsumed by his caretaker role. He rejoined his weekend hiking group, something he had abandoned when my hearing disappeared out of concern for leaving me alone. He resumed woodworking projects in the garage, creating beautiful furniture pieces that had once been his passion. As he reconnected with his own interests, our relationship shifted from caretaker-dependent to partnership again. 3 months into therapy, Abigail received a job offer from a marketing firm in Boston, a significant step up from her current position. She brought the offer letter to dinner one night, clearly excited but hesitant. "They need an answer by Friday," she said, watching my face carefully for reaction. "You should take it," I said immediately. "It is a fantastic opportunity." "Are you sure Dad will be traveling more this summer, and with your hearing still unstable?" She let the concern hang unfinished. "I managed 7 years of deafness," I reminded her. "I can certainly manage a few days alone, occasionally hearing or not." The relief on her face was palpable. "I will call them tomorrow to accept." 2 weeks later, we helped her pack for the move, the process bittersweet but necessary. As she prepared to drive to Boston, she hugged me tightly. "I am sorry for the things I said," she whispered. "I was wrong about you being a burden. You never were." "And I am sorry I did not see your struggles earlier," I replied. We both deserve fresh starts. It was not complete healing, but it was a beginning. We established weekly video calls, which gradually evolved from awkward obligations to genuine connections. Without the pressure of constant proximity, we found space to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. Thomas and I continued our own healing journey, rediscovering each other as partners rather than caretaker and dependent. We took a weekend trip to Cape Cod, our first vacation since my hearing loss, and spent hours walking the beach, talking about dreams deferred and possibilities ahead. The sound of waves crashing on shore was among the most beautiful I had experienced since my hearing returned, a constant reminder of the gift I had received. I maintained connections with the deaf community despite my hearing recovery, volunteering as an interpreter at community events and advocating for better accessibility in local businesses. My experience in both worlds gave me unique perspective and purpose, transforming what had once been a loss into a source of contribution. Setting boundaries with community members who had treated me differently became another part of my healing journey. When Mrs. Hoffman from church made a pitying comment about my condition, I addressed it directly. "I was a whole person when deaf Mrs. Hoffman, and I am a whole person now," I told her firmly. I never needed pity, only respect. Some relationships could not be repaired. Barbara, my former teaching colleague and friend, made awkward attempts to reconnect after learning my hearing had returned. But the memory of her dismissive comments in the grocery store remained too fresh. I was polite but distant, acknowledging that some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. As I reflect on this extraordinary chapter of my life, 1 year after my hearing mysteriously returned, I am struck by how something that should have been an unmitigated blessing became the catalyst for painful but necessary growth. The truth I discovered when I could suddenly hear what people said behind my back initially devastated me, but ultimately freed me from illusions and forced confrontation with long-simmering issues. My relationship with Abigail continues to heal slowly but steadily. Our weekly video calls have become a genuine pleasure rather than an obligation. She visits every few months, each visit more comfortable than the last. The assisted living facility suggestion has become a running joke between us, dark humor that transforms a painful memory into something we can now laugh about together. "Found you a nice place in Hartford, Mom." She will text randomly with a laughing emoji. "Great bingo night on Thursdays." 3 months ago, she surprised us by bringing home her new boyfriend, Michael, an architect she met through work. Unlike Jason, he made sincere efforts to know me as a person rather than a potential burden. Watching her build a life she genuinely wants, rather than one she felt trapped in, has been among my greatest joys. Thomas and I have discovered a new chapter in our marriage, one built on equal partnership rather than caretaker and dependent. We take ballroom dancing classes on Wednesday nights, something I could never have participated in while deaf. He has retired from full-time work, but consults on special projects, and we are planning a long-delayed trip to Italy next spring. My work with deaf children has expanded into a formal program at the community center, where I now coordinate services and advocate for resources. The ability to move between deaf and hearing worlds gives me unique perspective that benefits children navigating these complex identities. This work has given me purpose and community connection that transcends my family role. My hearing remains stable at about 70% capacity, though Dr. Peterson warns this could change at any time. I have made peace with this uncertainty, knowing that whatever happens, I now have the tools and self-knowledge to navigate either reality with dignity and purpose. The most profound lesson from this journey has been about truly hearing beyond the physical sense. For 7 years without physical hearing, I thought I understood what it meant to listen. But when my hearing returned, I discovered how much I had missed not just sounds, but the complex undercurrents of relationships and unspoken truths. Similarly, many people with perfect hearing never truly listen to what matters, the emotions behind words, the needs behind complaints, the love behind criticism. True connection requires more than functioning ears. It demands presence, empathy, and courage to hear difficult truths. This understanding has transformed how I approach all relationships now. I listen not just with my ears, but with my full attention and heart. I speak my truth directly rather than expecting others to intuit my needs. I recognize that everyone wears different faces in different contexts, not always out of deception, but as part of the complex navigation of human connection. My life now feels more authentic and purposeful than before my hearing loss or after its return. The painful revelations that came with hearing again forced growth that might never have happened otherwise. In the silence of deafness, certain truths remained unheard. In the cacophony of returned hearing, those truths demanded acknowledgement and response. Whatever challenges come next, I face them knowing that my worth is not determined by what others say when they think I cannot hear, nor by my physical abilities or limitations, but by the authenticity and courage with which I live each day. What have you learned about listening in your own relationships? Have you ever discovered something painful that ultimately led to growth? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life journeys. Remember, sometimes the most important things we hear are not said with words at all. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to speak your truth and truly hear others in return.